Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Leader Tree, where leadership grows, where strong roots build stronger skills. Tonight, I got a fun show lined up. I really do. I've been thinking it's time to throw a little philosophizing at you and have some fun with it. Because I've been thinking lately about some of the more endearing leadership skills and qualities that are actually more uncommon to find in leaders. And one of them is the quality of humility. Now, humility is defined by the dictionary as a modest or low view of one's own importance. Right? To think that you are not as good as something or someone else, therefore your viewpoint is of less importance than theirs. But I would tell you that that's not exactly the truth of humility. Now, is it? It's not about being less important or that someone else is more important than you, or someone else's viewpoints are more important than yours. But it's about knowing that yours is not the only viewpoint, isn't it? It's about knowing that while you're there to lead toward a goal, toward an end point, whatever the purpose for your particular drive is at that moment, you yourself are less important than the team that you're leading, right? That's humility. It's not that you're not important, it's that what you're doing is more important than who you particularly are as the leader of the group, right? And when you look at it from that perspective, it's a quality that we should all endeavor to have. But it's also a quality that a lot of leaders don't have, isn't it? Because when you're in charge, you think you've got to be in charge. You think you've got to lead from the front. Lead by example. In the military, that's a huge thing. Lead by example. And you should always lead by example anyway. But that doesn't mean that those you are leading are less important than you as the leader. Because let's face it, we're not leaders if we don't have anyone to lead. Now, are we? So I'm throwing a little philosophizing at you today. Because philosophy is something that I like a lot anyway. So when we think of famous philosophers, the father of philosophy, of course, is Socrates, right? Or as Bill and Ted would say, from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure back in the day, if you guys remember those movies, Socrates. There's a quote by Socrates, and I'm not even sure Socrates himself actually said it. Because, things that were written back then and recorded, they were just really word of mouth until somebody eventually wrote them down, right? So it could have been Socrates, it could have been Plato, it could have been anybody, right? But the quote is this: "The ancient oracle said that I was the wisest of all the Greeks. It is because I alone, of all the Greeks, know that I know nothing." He says, I know that I know nothing. What does that say to you? Well, I'll tell you what it says to me. And maybe it'll speak that way to you. If you have a dissenting opinion on that, put it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's go and see how we come on that. Because to me, what he is saying is not that he's an idiot. It's not that he's saying that the oracle is wrong. What he's saying here is that he's humble enough to understand that his opinion on something doesn't matter. He's humble enough to understand that in the grand scheme of things, even though he is the leader of a movement at the time toward enlightenment, he is only the student of the master, the great architect, which has built everything that he's trying to understand. And so, in a sense, he's telling you, I may be the teacher, but my endeavor is to be the student. My endeavor is to be trainable, to constantly be learning. I don't come in with preconceived notions, and I don't come in saying, I am a know-it-all, follow me. He's saying, let's discover these things together. Let's discover who we are and see how far we can go together. Follow me. I will show you the way to do it, and I will enjoy watching you do it. That's humility. That's humility. It's a very endearing quality. Super endearing quality. I like it a lot. There are several leaders that are well known that have that sense of humility. And there are others that don't have that sense of humility that are still just as accepted and just as powerful of a leader. They get many things done, right? So you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to you? So I'll throw a little more philosophy out at you. Another good philosopher that I like is Elbert Hubbard. Now, if you never heard of Elbert Hubbard, he was an American writer and philosopher, and I believe he was also a painter, but I've never seen any of his paintings. But one particular quote of his that I like is, he said, "Do not take life too seriously, because you'll never get out of it alive." So that's a good one. I like that one. And they've used that in, I believe they used that in a movie back in the 80s too, called Real Geniuses. So, and that was a Val Kilmer movie. And if you never saw that movie, you are missing out, okay? Go rent it. But, fun way to look at the world around you, right? And a very humble way to look at the world around you. Don't take life too seriously. After all, you'll never make it out of here alive. Things have a tendency to work themselves out if you allow them to, right? So, one of my own philosophies is that everything in life is inherently spherical in nature. Okay? And you can, if you examine it, you'll see, and it's just a theory, because I have no way to test it nor to prove it. But so far, everything that I've seen has always been similar in that regard. Let's just take the universe. You know, it's full of round objects, right? That circle around each other in circular patterns. You know, and then let's look at, you know, stars, planets. They're all circular. I've never seen a square one. You know? They're all circular. They're all spherical in nature. Right down to the cells of our body and atoms within us. Everything, molecules, you name it, they're all spherical in nature. Even when you get down to those little strings, the strings have a tendency to wrap themselves into little balls all the time. There's no getting out of it. Even when you come down to the fact, we're always, as human beings, always trying and fighting to keep our bodies from becoming rounder, right? As we get older, they want to get rounder, and we have to always fight against that. So, everything is spherical in nature. That's the theory, okay? My own philosophy on life. Now, what does that mean, though? It also means that things that happen are spherical in nature, too, right? So, for example, have you ever heard the term history repeats itself? Right? And there's plenty of evidence that history does repeat itself. People don't learn from their mistakes. They continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. Right? I'm in an abusive relationship. I blame myself for it somehow. It's never his fault or her fault. It's always my fault, says the person in the abusive relationship. Okay? But then one day something clicks in their mind and they say, no, it is not my fault. I'm out of here. What do? They go find themselves another abusive person to get into a second abusive relationship with. Most often, that's the way it works. Isn't that sad? But it's not their fault, necessarily. It's because things happen over and over again. Things are spherical. They keep coming back around. You break the pattern tries to recreate itself because that's nature. Whoops, something went wrong here. We broke a pattern. Let's get back on track. And you end up in another bad relationship. You ever notice that you have a type of people you like to date? It's not because other people are not just as fun to date. It's because other people aren't within your spherical pattern. How's that for blowing your mind? So that's why we have a type, right? That's why we have things that we gravitate toward. How often do you change the color of the car you buy? Do you always go and look for the same color as the color you had before? Many people do. Many people have trouble breaking out of the mold. Many people have trouble being more like Socrates and being trainable, being the observer in their life rather than being the driver of their life. Because the world is a magnificent place. It's full of wonderment and awe. And talking about Socrates and the fact that he knew that he didn't know everything. Let me tell you this. The whole theory behind the way Socrates looked at things was that he wasn't the answer guy. He was the question guy, right? That's the Socratic method. It's being able to start your process through answering questions or asking questions, looking at things from different perspectives. That's the humility of it, right? To say, I don't know everything necessarily, but I'm willing to take you down this journey. Will you come along with me? we can learn together, because you're just as important, and the information is just as important, if not most important, in the situation. We have several leaders that I like. One of them is a member of our group here at the Leader Tree, and that's Terry Wilson. Terry Wilson is a very humble man. You know, he's a genius, but he never refers to himself that way. The guy is sharp. No two ways about it. He is sharp as a tack. But he would never refer to himself as that. He would never tell you that he knows all the answers. But he will tell you that he's willing to guide you toward the answers that are right for you. That's a humble way of looking at your skill sets. And it's an endearing quality. Not a lot of leaders have. So I wanted to highlight that from a philosophical viewpoint, because I just find it fascinating. And maybe you will too. Then again, maybe I'm just boring you this week. And if so, don't worry. There's always next week. Hey, we're going to be right back after a short break. But when we come back, I've got another brain teaser for you in just a moment. Did you know 29% of businesses fail due to lack of working capital and cash flow? Lack of cash flow means not being able to pay your employees or your expenses on time. And that can be crippling for a small business. Most banks don't want to help you either, unless, of course, your business has a strong history with at least 3 years of verifiable records. Luckily, though, there are inexpensive and debt-free resources which can help get your cash flowing again. Go to atlasforthewin.com to find out how. That's atlasforthewin.com. Right now, we're offering free consultations when you visit atlasforthewin.com, or call us today at 321-360-7947, because your business is our world. Hey, we're back, and I got another brain teaser for you. Here we go. We're going to be talking about an article that was written in the Journal of Management Development. This is titled, Humility as Enlightened Leadership, a Chinese Perspective. And it's very interesting. It was written in 2019, so it's very cool. And there is a passage here that I want to read to you real quick. It says, humility is more about subduing one's ego. We're talking specifically in business here and in leadership. Humility is more about subduing one's ego and willingly acknowledging that self-importance is less worthy of regard than group achievement. Okay? And this was quoted to be something that Owens and Heichmann in 2016 came up with when they defined humility as consisting of 3 important pillars. And those were, first, a willingness to view oneself accurately. Second, having an appreciation of others' strengths and contributions. And third, having teachability, or an openness to new ideas and feedback. Those are the 3 pillars of humility, according to Owens and Heichmann in 2016, when they wrote that for this article. And so where did they get this? Well, they got a lot of it from Socrates, didn't they? Isn't that interesting? These are the same concepts, just redefined, repolished, right? A willingness to view oneself accurately, to say, I know that I know nothing. I understand that about me. I am not the one who knows it all. I'm the one who's asking the questions and seeking the answers from various sources. And those answers may be wrong. Aristotle once wrote about waves, and how a wave functioned. He was completely crazy about the ideas that he had for how a wave worked. We know that now. But he was trying to figure it out. He was the first dude to sit down and say, why is that wave moving? Why does it exist? Is it because there's a creature under the water flapping its wings around and making the water move at a certain pace? Is it because the wind is moving the water and the water picks up speed? Is it because the earth is moving under the water? He was trying to figure it out for the first time. His notions are a little out there, but they led us to the realities that we now know. Everything in science feeds off of what came before it. Everything in business feeds off of what came before it. Everything in leaders feed off what came before them. We learn from ourselves. We learn from others. We learn from history. We learn and we learn and we learn. And we don't stop learning if we are to be effective. We have to be teachable. That's the third pillar here. We have to be always open to new ideas, always open to the feedback that comes from it. And we have to have someone to lead. That's the second pillar, is in appreciation of others' strengths and contributions. And that's something that Terry Wilson is very good at. He doesn't toot his own horn at all. But he will get up and speak about others that are making things happen. He will get up and he will speak about others that are doing things using his guidance, using the information that he can provide them. They take it to a new level. They take it to something else. And he's learning from it. He's learning from how they use the information and the tools that he provides to do amazing things. And then he takes it the next step. It's all spherical, isn't it? It keeps coming back around. And then they in turn learn off of the things that he comes up with. And then he learns off of the ideas that are sparked by what they do. And it goes round and round. So far, nobody's proven my theory wrong. And everything being inherently spherical in nature. But I have no idea how to prove it as a fact. So it's just a theory. But you have to have a willingness to view yourself accurately. You have to have a willingness to appreciate the strengths and the contributions that others are bringing more than, say, I did this for you. You are where you are because of me. They are where they are because of them. They had the foresight to listen to you. They had the foresight to learn something they didn't know. But then they had the drive to put that into action. That was their strength. That was their contribution. So you appreciate that. And those three pillars of humility and the importance of a leader's willingness to consistently improve and excel, incorporated with that sense of being able to be taught. Those are the critical elements of a humble leader. It's not because you're less than. It makes you more than other leaders. It makes you more than others and your competitors. It makes you more endeared to those you are trying to lead. It makes you stronger. And that's pretty cool. So this is a single trait that is very endearing and yet it's kind of aloof. It's kind of out there. Not a lot of leaders really possess it, but we all still get things done. But when you find someone with this quality, ask yourself honestly, don't you gravitate their way? Don't you? Don't you just gravitate toward them and say, hey, you know what? I like what you're saying. I want to hear more. You got those that sit up there and preach. And they say, do this, do that, do the other thing. I know it works. Just do it and it will work. Then you got others that say, do this, do that, do the other things. I know it works because these cats are making it happen. Listen to them. They'll tell you. Isn't that more endearing? Don't you want to hear more and when you notice that than you do with the first one? Don't you find it more credible, more believable, more open to discussion? I know I do. I know one of the big selling features at factorcareers.com, which is a school that I run to teach people how to become factoring business brokers and take life by their own opportunities so that you don't have to work for someone else who maybe you don't like working for, right? You can work for yourself, work from your own home office or wherever you choose to work anywhere in the world, and you can do that job. And it's a fun job. You get to help people every day. But one of the biggest selling features that I have noticed, people tell me over and over again, is when they say, the thing that attracted me, Chris, is when you told me you didn't have all the answers. The thing that attracted me, Chris, is when you said you made mistakes and that you learn from those mistakes and you want to show me how to learn from those mistakes before I make them. Of course I learn from my mistakes. Of course I'd want to help you before you make the same mistake. That doesn't mean you're not going to still fall into the same trap I fell into. But others, just like me, have moved further faster than I did because they had the information that I learned the hard way to avoid. And I was able to impart that to them. I've got students that have made tens of thousands of dollars before they even graduated the course just because I was able to impart some knowledge to them that I had to learn the hard way that cost me thousands of dollars. And I was able to save them from that. And they were trainable enough to understand that difference. Wherever you are in your life, folks, try to incorporate some of the unorthodox traits that you don't often find in your everyday leader. Stand out from the crowd. That's what we're all trying to do in social media, after all. It's what we all try to do in life and in business. We want to be different. We want to stand out. We want to be noticed more. And if you want to stand out, take your life by the horns, you want to get set up as a factoring business broker, come check out factorcareers.com and see for yourself what others are doing. Reach out to them, ask them questions. The brokers that I've been able to train, it has been just a miracle to get to watch them work. And they've taught me stuff. Made my life take different directions too, to where I say, oh, let me do this to help them out. And then they come up with a new idea that I can play off of. You know, it's fun when you're having fun. Well, that's it, folks. Thanks for sticking it out with me. For the Leader Tree, I'm Chris Miller, reminding you to always keep smiling.